This new age builds a better kind of city, close to the soil once more, as molded to our human wants as planes are shaped for speed. New cities take form, green cities. They're built into the countryside. They're ringed with trees and fields and gardens. New cities are not allowed to grow and overcrowd beyond the size that makes them fit for living in. The new city is organized to make cooperation possible between machines and men and nature. Each has his place. The sun and air and open green are part of the design. Safe streets and quiet neighborhoods are not just matters of good luck. They're built into the pattern and built to stay there. Factories are set apart from living quarters, but close to rail and motor roads, with space to spread about in. Light industries are near at hand. The heavy ones are set apart. People can even walk to work and have their lunch at home sometimes, just like the kids. This is no suburb where the lucky people play at living in the country. This kind of city spells cooperation, wherever doing things together means cheapness or efficiency or better living. Each house is grouped with other houses close to the school, meeting hall, the movies, and the markets. Around these green communities, a belt of public land preserves their shape forever. The children need the earth for playing and growing. Bringing the city into the country. Bringing the parks and gardens back into the city. Never letting cities grow too big to manage. Never pushing the meadows, fields, and woods too far away. This works as well for modern living as once it did in old New England towns.
You make it bright and clear.
In the aftermath of World War I,
see the USA in your Chevrolet, America.
And that was because of another federal program that was even more powerful in creating racial segregation in this country. And that's a program run by the Federal Housing Administration, another New Deal agency, designed to suburbanize the entire white population into single-family homes in the suburbs. It was explicitly racial. After I published the book, I came across in some additional research. I wish I had seen it before because I would have put this in the book, but I found a poster that the Federal Housing Administration had produced. The poster showed an African-American being led away in handcuffs, and the headline was, "Escaped crime, moved to the suburbs." The Wilson administration, some geniuses in that administration, figured that if they could get white families to move to single-family homes after the Russian Revolution, they wouldn't become Bolsheviks. And so the federal government had a program to propagandize, starting in 1920, to propagandize white families to move to single-family homes in the suburbs. They actually sent out the community organizers. The Department of Commerce sent out community organizers around the country to hold meetings telling people that they could avoid racial strife by moving to the suburbs. But it didn't have much effect. Working class families didn't have the money to move to single-family homes in the suburbs. There was no money behind this program. It was just a propaganda campaign. But the Federal Housing Administration, the New Deal agency, began to put money behind it. And beginning slowly in the 1930s and then ramping up in the 1940s and early 1950s, the Federal Housing Administration began to subsidize the developers of giant subdivisions in every city in the country to create single-family home subdivisions for working-class families, white only.
Now in these pictures, we show you a few of the thousands of houses of all types that are currently under construction as a result of this building boom. We show you a few of the hundreds of thousands of men whom it has put back to work, some of them after years of idleness. Carpenters, bricklayers, masons, plumbers, men from every division of the building trades are getting an honest day's work. And this reemployment is not limited to the building trades. For every man put to work on a house, several more are engaged in making the needed materials and transporting them to where they are to be used. This coffee and that comes out of a pay envelope tastes a lot sweeter than the same food when it's bought with a relief check. This tidal wave of new construction is an important contribution to the economic rebuilding of America. Home ownership is the basis of a happy, contented family life. And now, through the use of a National Housing Act insured mortgage, is brought within the reach of all citizens on a monthly payment plan no greater than rent.
that development, built by Henry Dolger, a developer here in San Francisco, or San Lorenzo across the bay, and built by another developer, David Bohannon, or Levitt in Levittown. These developers could never have assembled the capital to build these giant subdivisions on their own. Levittown was 17,000 homes. Where do you get the capital to build 17,000 homes, for which you don't have any buyers? You have to buy the land, you have to build the homes. It was inconceivable. The only way you could develop the capital was by going to the federal government, the Federal Housing Administration, proposing a development, submitting your plans, everything from the architectural design to the materials you were going to use to the layout of the streets, and the commitment never to sell a home to a non-white. And with that commitment, the Federal Housing Administration would guarantee a bank loan, or bank loans, to build a development. The Federal Housing Administration even required that the developers of these subdivisions, like Levittown and those here in the Bay Area, include a clause in the deed of every home prohibiting resale to African Americans. And those clauses still exist today. If you look at the deeds of homes anywhere in the Bay Area, you'll see these federally required clauses that prohibit resale to African Americans. So the white families were able to move out of the suburbs, out of the public housing projects and out of urban areas generally, into these single-family home suburbs. The subsidy for these was so great. These were, I say, very small homes. They were for working-class families, not wealthy people. 750 square feet, small homes. They sold in that period of time, around 1950, in the mid-20th century, initially for about $8,000 or $9,000. In today's money, that's about $100,000 adjusted for inflation. Inexpensive homes, $100,000 for working-class families. My uncle moved to Levittown. He stocked vegetables in a supermarket. These were not homes for wealthy people. They were homes to get the white population out of urban areas into the suburbs. Those homes, they say, sold in those days for about $100,000 in today's money. Today, those homes sell for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, depending on the area of the country. And they are these suburbs are in every area of the country. This is how the country came to be suburbanized. The white families who moved into those homes with this federal subsidy, you can move out of public housing and move into one of these homes in a place like Levittown and pay less in your monthly housing costs than you were paying for rent in public housing. That's how enormous the subsidy was for white families to do that. They gained over the next 2 or 3 generations $300,000, $400,000 in equity, in wealth. Most middle-class families in this country, not the very wealthy, but most middle-class families in this country gain what wealth they have from the equity they have in their homes. The white families who were able to move, and this is most of the suburban population in this country, use that wealth to send their children to college. They used it to take care of emergencies, medical emergencies, or even bouts of unemployment. If you have wealth, you can weather unemployment. If you don't have wealth, it's much more difficult. And they used it to bequeath it to their children, who then had down payments for their own homes. Today, African American incomes in this country are 60% of white incomes. You would expect that if there was a 60% income ratio, there'd be a 60% wealth ratio as well. You can, if you have income of the same amount, you can save the same amount. The reality is that today, although the income ratio between blacks and whites is 60%, the wealth ratio is 10%. African Americans have 10% of the average wealth of whites, even though they have 60% of the average income. And that enormous disparity, which affects so much of the racial inequality in this country, so many of the problems we face in this country, is entirely attributable to unconstitutional federal housing policy that was practiced in the mid-20th century. Entirely attributable to an unconstitutional housing policy. The wealth gap, the fact that we have segregated neighborhoods still, because homes that sold for $100,000 in 1950, that was twice national median income. Any working class family can afford that. Homes that sell for today $500,000, 6 or 8 times national median income, are unaffordable to working class families of any race. So we passed the Fair Housing Act in 1968. We said in the Fair Housing Act, in effect, okay, African Americans, you can now move to Levittown or to any of these other suburbs. But it was an empty offer because the homes are no longer affordable to working class families of any race.
What's your problem?
I'm in a jam over how to finance a new house.
Financing a home needn't be a problem. This free FHA guide helps you measure your ability to pay for a home. Write to Home Financing, Federal Housing Administration, Washington, D.C.
Anybody got a jam-proof ballpoint?
Some people just can't bear it. I mean, they take it for so long and there's no money in the house, and some people can take this longer than others, but unless you got an awful lot of stability about you and a good strong constitution, this will break you down.
This is Levittown, Pennsylvania, a new suburban community of 60,000 people midway between Philadelphia and Trenton, New Jersey. With its giant shopping center, winding lanes named for flowers and trees, it is fairly typical of communities all over America, where families are pursuing the American dream to give their children a better chance in life. Levittowners are people of modest means. Nearly all are young people. A large proportion are veterans. There are few social agencies, and while many religious groups have established churches, they've not yet had time enough to develop programs to adequately serve the community. Most Levittowners are proud and happy in their new environment. For many, it is the first house of their own, and it represents a major financial investment. Social life is mainly confined to visits with the neighbors. Occasionally, there are community-wide events, but it's too early yet for most residents to become identified with the broader aspects of community living. Levittown was built by one man for whom it is named. Like many community developers, he set the initial policy and provided a minimum of essential services. When the houses were sold, naturally, he waited to its own slender resources. In August 1957, Levittown, Pennsylvania attracted international attention when violence erupted as William Myers, Jr. and his family moved into the 3-bedroom house at Daffodil and Deep Green Lanes. In almost all respects, the Myers family is close to the Levittown norm. They have 3 small children, the youngest only 1 month old. Myers served for 2.5 years in the Army and was discharged as a staff sergeant. He works as a laboratory technician and is studying for a degree as an electrical engineer. His wife, Daisy, is a college graduate. The Myers home is modestly furnished, and their late model family car was bought on time. They are very close to the Levittown norm, except in one respect. William Myers, Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community. Why did you select Levittown to live?
We were looking for a place to buy a home. We looked at Levittown, and we liked the homes here. We liked the advantages that Levittown seemed to offer in comparison to other cities. And we understood that it was going to be all white, and we were very happy to buy a home here.
How about your children? Have you talked with them about the Myers?
We have tried to keep the discussions away from the children. I feel that it's something that we adults should solve without bringing the children into it any more than we have to. We're doing it for the children, but I don't feel that they are old enough to understand the problem as it is.
Do you think a Negro family moving here will affect the community as a whole?
Definitely.
In what way?
I think that, well, the property values will immediately go down if they are allowed to move in here in any number.
Can you give a basis for that judgment?
Yes, we used to live in Washington, D.C., and we saw a very good example of that there.
The repetition of an experience that was distasteful. Is there to be no escape from living near Negroes? And what of the dream of middle-class respectability? If a Negro family can afford what you can afford, how do you justify your feeling of superiority? What other objections, aside from the effect on property values, do you have against the Myers?
The whole thing centers around the word integration. Home, as Mr. Myers said, because his home has been anything but peaceful since he moved in. He's got 3 children, and evidently he feels that they will be accepted socially. And I don't feel that they ever will be. But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites.
Do you intend to move?
At the time, no. It's a pretty impossible situation. We have our home here, and if the colored move in and run real estate values down, there are a lot of us, the GIs particularly, who are going to be more or less stuck with their homes.
But there are others who are for the Myers?
Yes, I've read about them.
For what reason, do you think, do they support the Myers?
Frankly, I don't know what reasons they can have for it. If they are homeowners in Levittown, I don't see what reasons they can have for it.
Do you think Myers will be able to live here comfortably?
Comfortably? No.
What course of action are you going to follow?
I'll do what I can to help, to get them out legally and peacefully. And as far as accepting them socially, if that's what you mean, I could never do that.